This is a classic because it brings our own modern concerns about fame and personal perception into the forefront in a beautiful and lovely way.
This is a classic because it's a really tight play. It is a tight verse play. It is snappy, it is funny, it is heartfelt, and eminently producible.
This is a classic because it's got two absolute haters and two absolute lovers.
Hey!
There we go. There we go. That's the one.
This is our history. This is our legacy.
Hello, and welcome to This is a Classic, the Expand the Canon Theater podcast. We're your hosts.
Gagarin, they, them, a curator for Expand the Canon and ensemble member for Hedgepig Ensemble Theater.
And me, Skye Pagan, she, her pronouns, also a curator for Expand the Canon and also an ensemble member.
Expand the Canon is a program of Hedgepig Ensemble, a Brooklyn-based company that reimagines the classics, creating a legacy of storytelling with gender equity at its core.
And today we are so excited to be talking about Le Favori, or The Favorite Minister, by Marie-Catherine Desjardins from the Expand the Canon list of 2023, available at expandthecanon.com.
Oh, Skye, you're French. My
I know.
God, be
Shannon,
still.
please don't hate me.
No, it sounds so good to me.
Thanks, I practiced. And if you were to meander your way over to expandthecanon.com, you might find a little blurb, a little pitch, one might say, about this play. Giggs, what might we find?
That pitch, hypothetically, might read as, if you're looking to explore the transactional nature of relationships when status is on the line, consider this tender-hearted, hilarious romp, complete with gossip, political intrigue, and romantic complications. Social prestige and customs maintain the delicate ecosystem that is the royal court, but when Moncade, the king's sensitive and widely beloved favorite, is cast out, chaos ensues. As Moncade reckons with his status, the courtiers around him scheme to advance their own agendas using witty prose and undeniably shady tactics. With themes of inner beauty, integrity, and finding meaning within the ordinary, Le Favori calls into question our social ties and asks us what it means to truly value friendship. Hey, that sounds
Beautiful. Such a good pitch.
Skye. So tell me about what happens in this play.
Oh my god, I thought you'd never ask. Oh, wow. So, as that beautiful pitch alluded to, this is sort of a classic court romp. If you're familiar with the 1600s French Moliere type things, this is sort of in that style, although not so much Tartuffe slamming doors and more of like tenderness. But it is a verse play. So, takes place at court. We open our play in the court of a king. It is unclear what the king's name is. He's just called the king. But at the top of this play, we are introduced to our hero, Moncade. Moncade is a courtier in the king's court, and he's sort of an unusually gentle character. From a prestigious background, wealthy and all of that, and he is very much in the king's favor. He is the favorite.
We're also at his country estate, correct? Like he's hosting everybody
He's
there.
hosting the king and everybody's there. Basically, like, the king goes where Moncade goes and everybody else goes where the king goes. So because of his status in the king's eyes, Moncade is very much the center of the court. And at the start of this play, we meet Moncade and his good friend Don Alvar, and they are discussing, as much as Moncade's status as favorite comes with a lot of, you know, glamour and riches and
Perks.
favors and perks and attentions and all those things, he doesn't really like it. He is, as we noted, a sort of sensitive guy. He's a shy guy. He doesn't really want the spotlight, and he finds all of this kind of overwhelming. And he also feels like, because of all the glitz and glamour and because of all the attentions he gets from the other courtiers, he can't really know who his true friends are.
It's all about that clout.
Literally, yes. And this is a particularly painful issue because it is quickly revealed that Moncade is in love and has been in love for a long time with a woman named Lindamira, who Elvar insists returns Moncade's affections, but Moncade is like, listen, like, how can I ever know for sure whether she likes me for me or whether she's just interested in my money and status? In the midst of this, they're interrupted by our friend Clotaire. Clotaire is a prince, not of this kingdom, but of a neighboring kingdom. He's in exile at this court
for a nondescript reason.
Yeah, nondescript reasons, but it becomes very clear and it's important to the story that, like, his situation is at home is slightly tenuous. He's there as a guest, and it was really Moncade himself who initially advocated for this kingdom opening up its hearth basically to Clotaire. But, you know, he's only there because the king allows him to be there.
Yeah. Social prestige and social grace is like the main theme of this play. Clotaire is riding very much on the social grace of keeping himself on everybody's good side so that he can stay there as long as he needs to.
Absolutely. And so, like, very much because of this slightly tenuous situation, Clotaire is, like, very outwardly solicitous of Moncade, like everybody is. And so he's being very flattering of him, and he's, you know, saying, like, where have you been? The king's looking for you. Everybody's looking for you. But despite, you know, being outwardly super nice, it becomes evident pretty quickly that Clotaire is also carrying a torch for the love of Moncade's life, Lindamira. And then Lindamira herself enters. So Clotaire dips out, leaving Moncade alone with Lindamira. This is our first moment seeing this supposedly very in love couple together. And they talk very openly about his situation. Moncade is sort of bemoaning his status again. This is like all Moncade does, is basically be there and be like, I'm sad. And everyone is like, why are you sad? You have everything anyone could ever want. And he's like, because heavy is the head that wears the crown, basically.
Heavy is the head that wears the clout, honey.
Heavy is the head that wears the clout. And so Moncade is bemoaning this to Lindamira. He feels like he can't really have true love because true love is built on seeing somebody honestly as they are and loving them for that, flaws and all, as opposed to, you know, the mirage of his status. And she argues that love is love and you shouldn't worry so much about where it comes from, that, like, you know what love is and you shouldn't question it. So clearly, like, this is a point of contention, and it feels kind of like an argument this couple has had before. As much as they clearly care about each other, they are clearly also distrustful that they are seeing eye to eye.
Yes.
So this little cute moment is interrupted by the king himself. The king enters, he's an older figure, he has like this paternal relationship to both Moncade and Lindamira, but he interrupts the situation and he's clearly upset. And he basically just corners Moncade and says, listen, dude, you're avoiding me. Everything I do because I love you. I'm trying to make you happy, and it feels like nothing I do is ever enough. What do I have to do to make you happy, basically, point blank. And Moncade basically answers, like, you can't do anything because the problem is you doing all this stuff, and that's what's making me unhappy. Which is probably not the what the king is used to hearing and what most people would say to a crown. So the king is clearly upset by this. He sort of storms off in a huff. He gives an ultimatum to Moncade, basically saying, like, you need to find a way to be happy with what I'm giving you, or it's all going to go away. I will retract my favor. But Moncade throws it back in his face and says what he was saying before about, I can't trust that Lindamira loves me because of this favor, so I'm never going to be happy because her love is the only thing that really matters for me. King's not happy, and storms off. Drama, drama, drama.
Ah!
So then we pivot a little bit. All of this has been one scene. All of that is like one long sort of French exit scene.
Sort of my favorite thing about this is that, like, the straw that breaks the camel's back is that the king wants to go hunting, and Moncade is like, I don't want to go hunting. And the king is like, well, if you don't love me.
Yeah.
But so then we
pivot.
We pivot to two of my favorite haters in this entire play.
Here's the thing. Are we about to meet one of the villains? Yes. Is she my favorite character in this play? Absolutely.
Yes.
So we meet two other courtiers in the court. This is Leonora and Elvira. And they're just like chatting about men and chatting about, you know, gossip and stuff like that. And Elvira, it becomes clear, is seemingly in love with Moncade, or at the very least in love with his status. So she's basically been stalking Lindamira in an attempt to like get in the way of Lindamira and Moncade's relationship. She has like this whole monologue where she's like, yeah, I'm like there all the time. I'm super annoying, reminding Lindamira of how sad the situation is so that she's not very happy when Moncade comes to visit. And
she's deploying like deep manipulative, like psychological warfare kind of tactics to make these two think that they don't like each other.
Absolutely. And listen, it's a little fierce.
She's that bitch.
Is she manipulative and is she the sort of anti-hero in this play? Absolutely. But she has some killer monologues and she's here for a good time, not a long time. And so Elvira, in a further attempt to disrupt this courtship between Lindamira and Moncade, directly accosts Moncade and is like flirting with him hot and heavy. And he has this great aside where he's like, I hate this woman. But he, despite, professedly not liking her, does open up to her about his fears that any change in his situation would mean like everybody would abandon him. So like the favor of the king is something kind of ephemeral and could change at any time.
Well, because it also comes with him like losing, like he's going to lose this country house and he's going to lose like nice things that the king has given him. And if this favor goes away, so does all the luxury and all the other great stuff too, which Moncade doesn't necessarily need, but he certainly is nervous about losing.
Yeah, I think that's sort of like the dichotomy of this character is like he doesn't like the attentions of the favor that the king gives him, but he does like having a nice house. There's a scene later on that we'll get to where he is talking to Lindamira and he's saying like, all I want is like the time to like walk outside and enjoy this beautiful estate and not have everybody be bothering me all the time to like hang out and go to parties and go hunting and stuff like that. Complicated character. So Elvira and Moncade are interrupted by the people's favorite prissy boy, Clotaire, who storms in and is like, bro, the king is really upset. What did you say to him? And Moncade is like, I don't know what's going on. Nobody believes him. Everybody's like, Moncade did something to piss off the king. But luckily Moncade is saved from answering by a direct message from the king saying Moncade is out. Moncade needs to pack his bags. He needs to go. So officially, Moncade is no longer the favorite. Shocking twist. Everybody, meaning Elvira and Clotaire, like very quickly make excuses to leave, thus realizing Moncade's fears that everybody only liked him while he was in favor, and the second he's out of favor, no one cares anymore. Moncade's not surprised and says, everybody hates me, and Elvar basically like turns on him and is like, how dare you, I'm your friend, I'm still here, you are not alone. Which I kind of love. I love that Elvar kind of stands up to Moncade, basically being like, how dare you not trust the people who say they love you? I know some of these guys sucks, but I'm here for you and I'm not going anywhere. So they have this nice sort of friendship moment. Yes. And Moncade sends Elvar to Lindamira with a message saying, I have to go, but I want to see you before I go. And so Elvar goes and tells Lindamira what's happened, including the important fact that the reason Moncade is being exiled is because Moncade valued his relationship with Lindamira more than he valued the king's favor. And the intimation being like the king was jealous of Moncade's attentions and angry that he didn't prize his situation more. And so the implication being, or at least how Lindamira takes it, is that her love of Moncade is at fault. And she's also extra upset by this because, not only does she feel implicated and guilty for Moncade's reduced circumstances, but she also is upset about the fact that she feels like she's wasted all this time and has never been truly honest with Moncade about how she really feels about him. So it's revealed like she really does love this guy. And so that's very sad. And then Clotaire, king of ruining the moment, interrupts yet again to slide straight into Lindamira's DMs and say that he's always hated Moncade, and now that the guy's out of the picture, he wants to marry Lindamira. She immediately sends him packing because Clotaire is a snake, and once again interrupted by the people's other favorite villain, Elvira. And Elvira is basically like, why do you care so much about a guy? And Lindamira says, I love him. That's why I care. And Elvira basically says, girl,
that's
love
a
yourself.
Gross one. Yeah.
Love yourself. No man is worth the trouble. Again, Elvira kind of slay. And then she, I love this scene. She, literally tries to read Lindamira this sad poem about broken hearts. And Lindamira is like, why is this? What are you doing? She tells her that Lindamira is taking out all of her anger about the king on Elvira, which is true. So it's this great scene where like Elvira's coming in and being a snake, but she's also like kind of speaking truth to Lindamira, which is like, you know, you're taking out your problems on me.
Like, you love a man? Ooh.
Yeah, like that's on you, bestie.
Girl.
So again, Elvira the villain, but also Elvira fierce. Anyway, Lindamira is not having any of this, so Elvira leaves. Moncade comes in, they confess their love, it's beautiful. And Lindamira also makes the point of, like, one of the reasons she was reticent about expressing her love before was that his attention was always divided. He was so overcome with the weight of his situation and the politics and all of that, that she felt that he couldn't really be there with her and couldn't really trust her. So like they have this, it's this kind of lovely moment of like, we loved each other, but neither of us was really trusting the other one. And so we could never really be intimate in any way. But now that he's lost his situation, he has to trust that because she is still there and expressing her love, he has to trust that her love was true.
Yep.
So she vows that she's going to follow him into exile. She has a country estate that is like her ancestral home that is not far from where he is being sent. And so she's like, I'll follow you once things settle down. I'll be close to you, and so we'll be able to see each other. We'll leave all of this behind us and we'll start a new life, basically.
Which is also something I feel like that's important to note, especially because like Lindamira has very much like established lands and titles and wealth and closeness to the king in a way where like her level of luxury and her status is not tied so directly to his favor and attention towards her as everyone else is. And like that's a big fuel for Elvira's dislike of her and Clotair's like drive to like get in her pants once Moncade is out of the picture, is that it's like she's also someone who commands a really large amount of wealth and privilege and power, just sort of naturally on her own.
Yeah, I think of it as like maybe the king is holding the entire country and like the seat of power, but Lindamira is sort of like the governor of her province. Like she has a stronghold that she can sort of retreat back to.
Yeah.
So, important. We pivot again to our girls, Elvira and Leonora. Elvira, ever practical and allergic to a bad time, has already found a new boyfriend, and she's moving on. Clotaire, again, king of entering at the wrong time, enters with news that he has a spy in Lindamira's house because he is creepy. And he has found out about her intentions to sneak away to the country with Moncade. This obviously makes her look bad because it seems like she is siding with Moncade over the king. So he's like, this is, you know, a bad situation politically. We have to tell them. And also he makes the point that because Lindamira has this stronghold she is returning to, there's an argument that could be made that it looks like she's like attempting a rebellion or to secede because she could rally her people in this stronghold and make an attack on the crown's power. It's pretty clear that like no one really believes that, but he's like, we could tell the king this and he and Moncade would be out of favor forever. Lindamira would be supplanted forever. We could be in power. So Elvira and Clotaire are like, we have to tell the king this. This is a great situation for us to grab onto power and also, notably, to distance themselves from Moncade and Lindamira and from being tarnished by association by snitching on them to the king.
Yes.
So again, trading on clout.
Control the narrative.
Exactly. So they do that. So they go to the king. They intimate that Lindamira could be plotting against the crown. The king expresses surprise that they're turning on their apparent friends, but Elvira and Clotaire swear that they only ever loved Moncade and Lindamira because the king loved them, and they never actually liked them for themselves. Lindamira, however, overhears this because she hasn't left yet, and she gets so mad that she just bursts in and calls them out, and the king challenges her on the spot and says, "Are you plotting against me?" To which she swears that she lies, basically. She says she's only leaving the court because she is disgusted with the politics. Cough, cough. Elvira. Clotaire. And not because she's in love with Moncade. She's just, like, done. And the king doesn't seem to believe her, but he lets it go. And Lindamira is sort of left in fear of what's going to happen next. And it turns out her fear is justified. The next thing that happens is the king arrests Moncade before he can leave, and he detains Lindamira. And Lindamira tries to convince Elvira to leave and escape while he still can, but he won't abandon Moncade either. So they both stay and wait to hear what the king is going to do. And the king confronts Lindamira one last time, and she testifies that it was his favor to Moncade that first made her love him, because instead of fame making him like a worse person or changing him at all, it only sort of solidified the person he was before, and that elevated him in her eyes. So clearly, like, you know, she's trying to manipulate the narrative and all of that, but I think she's also being honest. And Elvar also stands up for Moncade. Clotaire tries to convince the king that their insolence and insubordination is proof that they're all in cahoots, and the king says, we have to have this out, so he produces Moncade. And Moncade tries to stop Lindamira and Elvar from implicating themselves by trying to argue that Lindamira is only being nice to him and she doesn't actually love him, but Lindamira is not having it. She is speaking her truth. She is done with having to hide her feelings, and so she swears up and down that she loves Moncade completely, and she will share in whatever punishment the king devises for him, since they're partners. And at this, the king twist reveals that he was just pretending to be angry with Moncade, that it was all a pretense from the very start, because he shipped Moncade and Lindamira and was just trying to get them to realize how much they loved each other, and that their love had nothing to do with Moncade's favor, that Lindamira had loved Moncade the whole time, and Moncade just needed like a kick in the butt to like actually get out there and declare himself.
What a crafty little queen.
Crafty. There's also this moment where he's like, I asked you what I needed to do to make you happy, and the thing you said was the only thing that would make you happy was Lindamira's love, so I got you Lindamira's love. So the king is an ally all along. Clotaire just like has a meltdown and nobody cares, and the king is basically like, he's having a tantrum, leave him go. We're gonna have a party.
They're all gonna go have a party.
They're all gonna have a party. They're all gonna have a great time, but we cannot leave our girl Elvira without having the last word. She basically closes out the play by saying, true love ain't shit, and I'm going to keep my boy toys, and then she runs off to her boyfriend.
Because she got her next one already lined up, and she's like, I'm not going to go to this party. My new boy is waiting for me. I'm going to go to see him.
It's amazing. And that's the play.
Legacy.
Like we said, just like a tender-hearted romp. Some like beautiful discussions of fame and clout and how it sort of distorts our perceptions of people, and it's a beautiful play about like being honest with the people you love, and you know what it costs us to actually like put ourselves out there.
Yeah.
And it's really sweet, and got some killer monologues, especially for Elvira.
Oh yeah, if you're looking to fulfill your like semi-comic bitchy girl monologue slot, we got you. So I think it's interesting that you just brought up the cost of love, because that's like a continual conversation in this play. Not just like what is someone's love worth in the sense of like how much do you have to give to someone in order for you to receive their love, but also I found really very interesting the different types of love and like love needs. I feel like there's a very real need coming from like Moncade and Elvar and Lindamira of a genuine like emotional romantic fulfillment, like my soul sees your soul kind of feeling, you know, which I think a lot of people would describe as being like an unconditional love versus this very materialistically based love of the court. You see this with Elvira and Clotaire, where Elvira is kind of just chasing the guy who's going to be able to give her the best kind of pleasurable, happy life full of all the fluffy pillows that she could possibly want. And then we have Clotaire, who has nothing and is probably in his own way trying to manipulate love out of people in a way to maintain his material needs.
I really love that like the essential barrier to Moncade and Lindamira's relationship is actually just like a communication breakdown. Because it's very clear from the play of like these two have like been into each other for at least a year. Like it has been a while that they've been paying each other attentions and spending time together. There is clearly marked favor between them that is visible to everybody else. And they both kind of acknowledge that between each other. But at the same time, it's like they're not quite able to like lock it down because they just can't trust each other. And that's really because they're not communicating, and it takes a little bit of a nudge for them to kind of get over their own things. For, Moncade, he's not trusting Lindamira because he can't let go of his own sort of feelings of insecurity about his situation. And for Lindamira, she feels that Moncade is so caught up in his situation that he isn't seeing her, really.
100%. I was just going to follow up on that. That, like, Moncade, especially in the beginning of this play, comes across to me very self-obsessed and self-absorbed.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in a bad way, but he is, and that is certainly a flaw in his character, is that he is unable to see the people around him for who they really are because he's so busy maintaining his status. And, like, he acts like he doesn't want it, but he talks an awful lot about all the material things that he has from the king, how he's going to lose them, and how none of these things are really his to begin with. I feel like this is a more understandable situation for Lindamira than it is for Moncade. You look at the women in this court, if you're going to tie yourself to someone, you would naturally be more guarded about that kind of a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I also really like about this play is it, like, Moncade and the king are both sort of gentle people, and Moncade's gentleness and timidity is, like, both the thing that people love about him explicitly, but it is also, like, the thing that gets in his own way. Like you said, he is his own worst enemy because he's so insecure. And the thing I really love the king in this play. When you first encounter him, you hear those first scenes and you're like, oh, this is like this sort of tyrannical character. But then this switch at the end, you like review those first few scenes with the king where he's telling off Moncade and going on about how he doesn't take the king's favor seriously and he's disregarding him and he's, so ungrateful and all of that. And you think back on it, and if you review it from like a genuine place of this is somebody who views Moncade as a son and who really loves him, you then review it as this sort of like frustrated father figure of like, you are being given so much, you have so much privilege, and you are so miserable, and you won't open up to anybody, and you're squandering it. You are squandering your privilege.
And also, like, as someone where he's like, I care about you, and it's like, we are friends. Why don't you want to spend time with me? Why are you avoiding me? Like, those are things that are very understandably hurtful on the king's end. Yeah. To have, like, chosen this favorite, and it's like your favorite never wants to. Also, like, we're talking about clout all the time and all of this like political intrigue. How does it look to be the king and to have your favorite constantly eschewing your company, like being super, super sad all the time and like not seeming grateful and like not doing the things that a favorite is necessarily supposed to do or is supposed to behave?
Mm-hmm. And I think in that way, like, this becomes also a really interesting story about privilege because, like, Moncade's point of view is I have all this privilege and I haven't done anything to earn it, and it gives me all these things and people treat me differently because of that, and so it's not real and I can't trust it. But at the same time, it's like, for me, the takeaway from this play, the sort of one-line thing is like, your privilege is not your fault, but it is your responsibility to be respectful about it and use that privilege for good. Because if you're just like sitting there so caught up in your own guilt over the situation and your own insecurities about your inadequacy and all of that, you're just going to waste it. And then
and you're going to miss the entire world around you.
Yeah. And it's also kind of like disrespectful. Like, yeah. You know what I mean? I think the direct parallels are to, the way we talk about privilege now is like, it's not your fault. The things you are born into, the education you are given and all of that, what is important is like what you do with it and that you're aware of it. And where people get bogged down is just in the guilt over, but I didn't work for these things. And it's like, well, yeah, it's good to be aware of that. And also if you just feel so guilty that you have them, so do something with them. And that becomes the journey that Moncade has to grow through in this play. Because I really love the way that there's a lot of character development.
Yeah, well, even if you want to take this idea of privilege and extending it to all of the other characters, because I am like really, really into how Elvira is like loving these men for the purpose of loving them is like really ridiculous. And she continually sort of has these like monologues about seeking pleasure and happiness, being like a solo gal out in this court. That's probably also like a survival tactic for her, is that she's like, I have to be sure that she's on the right side of the narrative every single time. And that's part of the reason why she is so manipulative. And it's also like, we love her for it. And it's also like, she's honest about it. She's like, yeah I'm going to do these things, but that's because it's the way that I protect my life in order to live it the way that I want to live it.
Yeah.
Which
Like,
is
I make no apologies about, I mean, like, every scene
Yeah.
between her and Leonora is Leonora being like, you're being crazy, and Elvira being like, why? All I'm doing is pursuing my own joy and trying to, you know, solidify my station in the way that I want to keep living my life, and what's wrong with that?
100%. And it's like you see kind of the opposite of that embodied in Clotaire, where he is this prince presumably coming from a place of great privilege who doesn't have that backing anymore, but he's still behaving in a way as if people should perhaps endow him with certain things immediately all the time. Like he's like, oh, Moncade, we're best friends. And Moncade's like, we've had maybe 2 conversations.
Yeah.
You know? And it's the same thing with Linda Meir, where he's like immediately like, oh, well, because your boyfriend's out of the picture, you're going to love me, right? And she's like, why would I? I don't know you.
Elvira and Clotaire are interesting foils to each other. I think it is very intentional that there are 2 villains in here. And I think it's practical also. There's like the love quadrangle aspect, but also because
100%.
Clotaire at the end, you're sort of like, this is a privileged boy who like tried to use his privilege to manipulate people and failed. And therefore we have very little sympathy for him. Whereas Elvira, you have more sympathy for her as a character because she is manipulative.
She's doing it well, and she's doing it for a reason that is clear to us. And also that, like, we as an audience member can't necessarily fault her for.
Yeah. Elvira's sort of takeaway is like, well, whatever, I'm going to enjoy my life and move on. And Clotaire has a meltdown.
Yeah, because it's not that deep for her. And she knows at this point not to put too many eggs in one basket.
History.
So, Skye, do you want to tell me a little bit about Marie-Catherine Desjardins? Oui, oui.
So sorry. So sorry, Shannon. Absolutely. I would love to. So, in talking about Marie-Catherine Desjardins, the main takeaway that we've gotten about her bio is there's some scholarly debate about who she was and what she was like and what her life was like. So some historians, including some who were writing about her contemporaneously, regarded her as this sort of scandalous, flamboyant woman who ran away from home to be an actress, who had all these affairs. She worked with Moliere. And we do know that she was affiliated with Moliere, although mostly as a writer, not an actor. And she never took the stage. However, a lot of more recent scholars have sort of disregarded this sort of sensationalist narrative about her, and what's been replaced is a story of somebody who was just sort of like a hard-working woman from a working class background who had her reputation sort of tarnished by a man treating her badly. So like there's a possible like storyline here of like, oh, history is looking more kindly on this person now because we're viewing it through a different lens. But anyway, getting to her bio, Desjardins was born in 1640. We're pretty sure she was born in Paris, although this isn't 100% confirmed. She is French. Her father was penniless, and so the family moved away from Paris when Desjardins was 10. They did move back when she was 15. So when she was a teenager, Desjardins' parents divorced, which is notable. That wasn't super common at the time.
I was going to say, that's interesting.
I don't know specifically why, but clearly something happened. And her mother took her and her sister back to Paris to live there. And it was this second move back to the city of Paris that introduced Desjardins to a former employer of her mother's, who was the wife of the Duke, who recognized Desjardins' poetic talent for the first time. And this was like the breakthrough moment. So Desjardins is like this teenager who has some of these connections in the aristocracy, and she starts getting received into a lot of the salons. This is like, the time of the salons, there's this big literary movement. This is the time of Moliere. And so she is developing this circle of friends who are in high places and who have this artistic bent. And one of these friends notably really propelled Desjardins to fame when this friend requested that she write a summary of one of Moliere's plays. I don't know like what it was about the summary. Apparently like this is, I guess it's like writing coverage of a play basically, but this particular summary was apparently really, really funny and good, and started just like making the back channel circles, and it became so widely circulated that Desjardins actually had to hire a literary agent and an editor in order to manage all the requests that were coming in. So she like becomes famous. She literally goes viral. She goes 17th century viral.
Oh, whoa.
For her coverage of a Molière play, and starts publishing.
Hey.
She publishes a collection of poems in 1662. So she's like 22 at this point. She is young. And her agent encourages her to write novels, which she would go on to produce almost 20 of, starting when she was like 20. So she does start writing plays around this time as well. She met a mentor figure who was like a dramatic theorist, and this mentor was the one who encouraged her to write plays. So she wrote a couple plays starting in the early 1660s, notably The Favorite Minister in 1665. She did stop writing for the stage because of her financial situation. There wasn't enough money in it. She does not come from a wealthy background, and her family was experiencing some issues at this time. And it's also notable because this, at the same time as this is happening, she's in this sort of tumultuous relationship, which we alluded to earlier, which will become sort of one of the defining narratives of her life. So in 1658, so right around the time that like her writing is starting to take off, she had fallen in love with this young army officer named Antoine de Boisset de Villedieu. And shortly after they met, Villedieu fell very ill and sort of made a deathbed wish to marry Desjardins if he ever recovered.
Whoa.
His family was very well-to-do and well-connected, and they did not approve of this relationship, but like he was on his deathbed, like it was like dramatic, that sort of thing. However, he did not die, and so under pressure from his family, he like coerced her into signing this declaration that they like didn't have any relationship and they weren't engaged anymore. So he abandons her, but she was still in love with him. She kept pursuing him, and then she got him to sign like this agreement with a quote unquote like intent to be married. So like I guess like an engagement declaration kind of thing before he set sail for war in Spain. And again, he was like, I'm going to die in this war, so whatever. So he signs this declaration. He comes back and is like, I didn't die. Time to get out of this declaration again. So he makes her sign another document that is like breaking off their engagement once again. But she still loved him. And like this guy is terrible. Like he sells her letters, to the press, like to the gossip magazines, to him, like he is maligning her. Like it is a bad situation. So in 1667, he dies in battle. He finally dies.
That dude's got to keep, like, he just kept waiting for death to absolve him of all of his responsibilities.
And so even though they like never formally married, and like depending on who you ask may or may not have been formally engaged, she took on his last name and started calling herself Marie Catherine Villedieu, and called herself his widow. So finally, around 1672, society is not treating her very kindly, and she enters a convent to sort of escape everything. That doesn't last long. She's writing too much and, is too restless for a convent, so she leaves. And finally, in 1677, she does marry a nobleman who comes from a more comfortable background named Claude Nicolas Deschaste, and they have a son. So hopefully, things are looking up. Except he dies. He dies like a year and a half into their marriage, but she got along with her father-in-law, and he takes her and her son in, and so her financial stability situation is at least somewhat resolved. So she, after a while, does move back to her own family. Her mother at this point and her sister had moved away from Paris again, so she goes to live with them in the country, and she dies a few years later. She dies in 1683.
Oh,
so
baby.
Pretty young. She would have been like 40-something years old.
Well, she kind of been through a lot.
Yeah, like really, like girl had a rough life. But despite these romantic tribulations and despite, her financial issues and being maligned in the press and all these things, she was still considered and is now considered to be a trailblazing writer of the time. She was the first woman writer to have her plays professionally staged in the French capital. She was the first woman writer to be reviewed in a gazette. And The Favorite Minister is the first play by a woman to receive a command performance at the French court.
Oh, whoa.
So in the time of Moliere, where Moliere was completely holding court, she was this other voice.
Getting her say in.
Yeah, and that breaking down of barriers led to other women getting produced more widely and having more plays put on in the French capital and in the court as well. So, a really important historical figure in that way. And despite her, tragically shortened life and challenging circumstances, she did achieve a lot of success and, was a really phenomenal writer. Should be studied more. And I think it's interesting the fact that the tenor of the scholarship about her is shifting so much. I think a lot of that is probably due to, our changing politics about this of, once upon a time, perhaps when she was alive, the narrative would have been oh, this loose woman who is crazy, who's chasing after a man. And now it's hey, she was treated really badly by this guy. She was in a really toxic relationship for a really long time, and it took a lot of her life. And, that sucks. So I appreciate that there is a little bit more respect being given back to her achievements.
Editing of the narrative.
Yeah. And it just goes to show things change and history it's not definitive. It's how you view it. So.
Ooh. Go off.
Ooh. That's Marie-Catherine.
And now a scene from the play, performed by Dorothea Gloria as Elvira and Samanthia Nixon as Leonora.
At the risk of being an irksome friend to you, know this strange method I can't tolerate. In 1 hour's time, Moncade's forgotten by you. That man's so perfect.
He is in disgrace.
For being disgraced, is he no less the same? What? Your heart feels a passionate affection, and then, with no trouble, you just stop at will? You change your lovers as one does handkerchiefs.
And don't you find my method admirable? My heart loved him as long as he was lovable. When being in favor made his love worth prizing, when games and laughter followed him everywhere, I, who love joy and gladness in all things, endeavored without ceasing to acquire him. But in this great reversal, where we find in him merely a spirit crushed by grief and sorrow, when he's an object less of pleasure than of tears, could I be right in seeing the same charms in him? Where would my mind and my discernment be? Come now, give some support to your argument.
You would be showing an intrepid soul. Great constancy.
Oh, let's seek what is solid. Fie on your constancy. It's out of fashion. It's just a silly fancy dressed as a virtue. If our fathers once held to that lunacy, our generation's quite cured of that illness. Believe me, Leonora, nowadays at court, they don't give chains to Cupid anymore. Since he's a child, they think him frolicsome. What was a torments treated like a game?
It's true to see you treat his passion thus. One can't deny that it's a game to you. But on one point I must be satisfied. Did you not love Moncade before this disgrace? Was it pretense or not?
You know me well. I hate all that is loved and never love a thing. Whatever might deprive me of the name of fairest blindly inspires in me a mortal hatred. Lindamira seemed more charming than I when she subjugated the king's chief minister. As soon as she received this glorious homage, at once she drew upon her all my rage. But whatever feelings came with this vehement wrath, I hated her and did not love her lover. To show you better how I loved Moncade, I've made a conquest on my stroll just now. For, without flattery, or else I'm no judge, Don Lope has felt the power of my attractions. By chance I surprised a certain tender glance.
Truly, the more you speak, the less I understand you. This way of loving and these sudden changes for people of my sort are mystifying.
Thanks, Dorothea and Samanthia.
And a big, big thank you to Sierra Rosetta for doing the dramaturgy on this particular episode. Thank you, Sierra.
Dong, dong.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of This is a Classic, the Expand the Canon podcast. You can learn more at expandthecanon.com.
If you believe in the importance of expanding the canon, and if you don't, I don't know why you're listening to this podcast, please give us a 5-star review and subscribe, baby.
And then hit the share button. Forward it along to a friend, a colleague, a professor, a bitter ex.
For info on what's up next, you can follow us on Instagram,
At Hedgepig Ensemble Theater,
Facebook,
/Hedgepig Ensemble Theater.
or join our mailing list at hedgepigensemble.org.
You can also support this effort by donating at the link in the comments below.
Again, I'm Gagarin.
And I'm Skye.
Au revoir.
Au revoir! Oui.